Ryan, good morning. Excited to have the conversation today. Thanks so much for making the time. And as we get started, maybe if you could just give a quick introduction to kind of your background and what led you to the role of Chief Product Officer over at Paychex.
Yeah, well, thanks for first off, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I'm Ryan. Obviously, my background has really been all about HCM software since day one. My first job coming out of school was actually in a little support team in a small HR software company out in Denver. So have never looked back. But most recently, taking on the role of Chief Product Officer at Paychex, joined through the acquisition that Paychex made a little over a year ago now of Paycor, where I had been for a number of years leading product and technology functions. So it's been an exciting little past year here, and we're looking forward to the future.
Yeah, I remember when the acquisition happened, Raul came and spoke to one of our clients about what it was going to mean. And one of the things that he said was, Paychex looks at Paycor as their technology strategy. And he would mention how, the chief product officer of the joint companies will come from Paycor. So here you are. But tell us a little bit more about like kind of why they made that decision, what they saw in Paycor from a technology standpoint, and what that first year is looking like.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's been a fantastic first year. We brought the teams together, delivered a ton of integration across the product sets to bring a lot of the great kind of wide breadth of products that Paychex offers to the Paycore base, and we launched, our all new AI platform in Wise as well. So it's been a heck of a year. I think in terms of why the acquisition and what Paycor brings, a couple things really. One, it really starts to serve as now the upmarket platform across Paychecks. And so, we'll get into talking about the different platforms and the strategy, but that was one of the big levels of investment was to bring that platform to help Paychecks have a good solution for larger customers as they continue to grow. And I think, to keep bringing some of the pace and the innovation that Paycor had, but I say that without wanting to say that there wasn't a lot of great pace and innovation at Paychex pre-Paycor because there were a lot of great things going on. So it's to continue building into that and driving that evolution.
Yeah, when we look across the HCM landscape, I think there's companies that land in different camps. So you've got like ADP and Ultimate Software, or excuse me, UKG and Paychex now that have sort of a multi-product portfolio approach, and then you've got others like Paycom and Rippling and Workday and others that really kind of try to go behind one system. What can you tell us about like the relative strengths and challenges that come with the multi-system approach?
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to every solution, but we think the pros are strong when you think about the multi-platform. But I think there's a couple of things to think about. One, it can get really difficult to stretch a platform across a really wide variety of types of businesses. And I think that's one of the unique things about Paychex is we serve businesses from, one, two, three employees to 10,000 and more employees. And the needs of a company at one end of that spectrum versus the other end of that spectrum are very, very different. And so one of the real advantages we get from a multi-platform strategy is to be able to think about what are the needs that a customer has in those different kind of phases of growth. And it's really not all about size, right? It can come down to the complexity of their business, the stage that they happen to be in, what level of service and assistance they want from the buying cycle all the way to how they partner with us. But with the multi-platform strategy, we have the ability to kind of target our platforms at the different segments and invest differently in different areas and not have this one size fits all approach because it's not the way businesses really work. There's a lot of shared components between the platforms that allow us to get a lot of kind of synergy and advantage, but we get those different experiences, those different investments to serve the customers, and that's how we help our customers win, or one of the ways we help our customers win by being able to serve them in kind of ways targeted to their needs.
You mentioned the shared synergies between the platforms, and I think that's something I've heard as a criticism of the multi-platform strategy is kind of just the intensity of the R&D effort and the administrative overhead of maintaining two separate systems. But it sounds like you're saying it's more like call it one and a half. Like they can share like a similar base and then have different heads. So like tell me a little bit more about how that actually looks in practice. Like what is shared, what is different, how do you guys actually make those calls?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sometimes the way we talk about it, even to our teams, is like the platforms draft off of each other, right? Like in racing, is one advantage, one as one advances, the other one gets to kind of use that advance to power forward. But a couple examples maybe to talk about that. One, I'd say that the benefit that all of our platforms get is kind of the power of Paychex. So you take hundreds of thousands of customers over 50 years in business, right? All of that data, all of that intelligence, all of that expertise benefits every single one of our platforms. And so whether that's directly in the product or through the service capabilities we bring to the table, like all of that comes to the fore, regardless of which platform you're on. And one of the ways you're seeing that most recently kind of like come to fruition is the launch of Wise, our new AI platform. And so whether you're in Flex or in Paycor, those capabilities, the knowledge of all of those customers, everything that is behind that is powering both systems. We've also looked at some of the core engines behind the systems and are looking to move those together over time. Think things like maybe tax engines, for example, right? We don't necessarily need to have a lot of different tax platforms running around to power all of the different products. And then, other than having kind of the strength of all of that in one place, the other way that that really benefits customers is now we don't have to have multiple teams working on things like that, right? And we can take those teams and we can put them into other things that are going to benefit our customers as well.
You've mentioned it a couple of times, so let's just jump into it. So Wise, you guys announced it a couple weeks ago, I want to say now, and tell me a little bit more. I mean, I think the market's hearing a lot of announcements about we have AI now. Yeah, tell us like the distinctive elements of what the Paychex Wise does a little bit different.
Yeah, so there's really three pillars that we think about when we think about the Wise platform, and we talk about it from the concept of intelligence to assistance to agents or action, really, at the end of the day, right? And I think it starts with kind of that context-aware system that no matter what you're doing, knows who you are, your business, and knows the changes that are happening, and can recommend actions to you. And those actions could be as simple as, hey, you hired a new employee in a new jurisdiction. We're going to go set these things up for you, or you need to start doing these things because you're in a new jurisdiction. It could be, getting maybe a little bit more complex around your overtime starting to run hot on this one shift. If you make these four changes, you can bring it back into norms and anywhere in between. And I look at that as kind of that base intelligence level of the system. The next step up is the concept of assistance. And this is really how we're helping guide people through work. Not necessarily to that kind of full agentic autonomous capability yet when we think of this pillar, but how are we helping a user complete a task with guidance and with steps along the way? And then finally, kind of the ultimate capabilities of really the ability to have that autonomous work happening for you, always with you as the human still in the loop. But this is the point now of, we reach the point where does a person need to process payroll every single week, or can the system have payroll ready for them to simply review and approve the few changes that need to be made? Can they set up their own agents in the system to actually work for them? Think of that really hyper kind of personalization that AI can bring to the table. But it's that ability now to really not just get questions answered, but actually do work and take on work on behalf of users in the system.
Okay. And when you look at bringing AI into a system as sensitive as HCM, I think there's always the framework of we've got very deterministic software that we built over the last 20 years, and then now we have probabilistic AI. And how do you guys marry the two and make sure that probabilistic actions aren't being taken where deterministic things need to be done?
Yeah, no, it's a tricky question, right? And to get it right, because the impact of getting it wrong is real. We're impacting real people, real employees, and what it may mean, in their daily lives. But I think there's a couple things that we're thinking about first. One, that question is something our users are asking us all of the time, and probably like every piece of software out there, you've got your users on a bit of a curve of some people who are really excited about it, and some people who are a little nervous, really, maybe even scared of what AI means. And so, I think one, the human in the loop is a really critical piece for us. So as we say autonomous, you can set up agents in the system that are going to go take care of work and do work, but that's always at your bidding. You've told it what you want it to go do and kind of configure that agent. If an agent is recognizing changes that need to happen or actions that need to happen, it's going to come check in with its user before it goes and actually takes those actions. And then the security and the kind of the auditing capabilities are another really important part of the platform, in that an agent acting on behalf of me, who at the end of the day is just a manager in the system, right? Who has the ability to see my people and do what a manager is allowed to do, can never do anything more than that. So it only has the security of the person it's acting on the behalf of. And then we can go and always trace everything that's been done as well. So we have kind of the ability, one, to ensure security is correct and reportability and auditability is very thorough. But then it's that next step of it's taking on the action that the user or the human is directing it to do in particular. So it kind of gives the human that ultimate control and ultimate authority, because these decisions are really important after all, because impacting people.
Yeah, and you mentioned, like, gradients of comfort level with AI amongst user bases. So, I imagine, like, you guys are building for kind of the full use case, but then there's gonna be, like we mentioned, like, a gradient of adoption. How do you think about putting that into the system where it's available and people kinda have the nudge that it's there, but they're not forced to do it? So how do you sort of make all this power available, but not, like, overwhelm people with it or make people use it if they don't want to?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I think we're not necessarily replacing everything with AI. You're not going to log in tomorrow and it's all AI and that's the only way for it to work. But at the same time, I don't see a future without AI, driving the system. So that change curve question is really important. And I think a great example is some of the ways that we're improving the pay cycle altogether. And there's not necessarily an option for a user to come in and say, I'm going to do payroll with AI or I'm going to do payroll without AI, right? You're just doing payroll. And we're slowly bringing all of the changes into the system, all of the enhancements and improvements from anomaly detection to recognizing, missed punches and correcting those things, all the way through to having payroll fully ready to process for you and more just ready to be reviewed. But those are coming over time, and we're kind of bringing those changes in slowly and steadily so that there's not this one moment when a customer wakes up and on Monday morning everything's different, and it feels like it's all been changed on me. Like those changes are happening over time, allowing them to adapt, allowing the system to keep learning and getting more intelligent. But we're finding that that's making it significantly easier for customers to go in and adopt, because it's not I have to shift my entire way of working to take advantage of this. It's just coming into and improving my ways of working, every single week, basically.
Yeah, that assist pillar you're talking about, it just you don't notice it, but it just got like, actions just got easier and you didn't really understand how, and you don't need to understand why.
Yeah, that's when you achieve that, that's like the nirvana state, right? Of any kind of product enhancement and rollout. So for
Yeah,
sure.
and then when you think about not just rolling out to the user, but really to the business, there's a lot of talk about, like, the economic changes, and I'm seeing all different approaches across the market. Like, I've seen, Rippling, they're charging basically, like, the cost of another HCM, right? It's like, "Hey, there's a lot of excitement about AI, let's charge for that access." And then I think Workday sort of started on a charge, but then they wanna tell Wall Street they have more adoption, so now it's all baked in and it's free and everyone's using it. So, like, how do you guys think about the right way to monetize access to AI?
Yeah, this is a tricky question, not just in the HCM industry at the end of the day. So I think we definitely see a path to monetizing AI as we move forward, and I think there's a couple ways we're thinking about it, and we'll probably test and learn as we go, honestly, because there's, the industry itself has migrated from a per check model back in the day. You still got a lot of per check out there to a PEPM model, and now the questions are kind of coming up, or what are we paying additionally over those kind of base fees? And the way we want to look at it is getting into that kind of outcome driven mode. If AI is going to drive and actually be more of the digital workforce, and that's part of the vision for Wise in particular, we should be able to tell you as a customer very clearly, these are the things that it's doing for you. This is the value that you're capturing as a result of it, and therefore this is how we're going to price and charge accordingly for it. I think the things we think about, though, is we don't want our customers to necessarily have bills that are all over the place every single month, right? Like that's not something the average business is really looking forward to. Like one of the hallmarks has been it's a steady investment every single month as your business grows. So I think we have to kind of marry those two together, as we want to be able to allow customers to still have dependability in their bills, but make sure that we're capturing the value for the value we're providing and making that value really, really clear to our customers.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, I think, exciting development possible with this jobs to be done or task complete type of model, which I think just really incentivizes organizations. I think it creates tighter alignment between customer and vendor, where I'm getting work done for you. It's not you're paying for this and I hope you use it and I hope you log in so that the next renewal goes well. It's like, no, no, like each day, each month, like our revenues are tied together with you getting as much value as possible out of the system.
Well, I think what's interesting, if you think about, kind of the very much the average Paychex customer, they're a smaller business, overall, less so for the Paycor base, but especially within Paychex Flex, and they're growing usually at really good and the strong rates. But as you grow as a business, the last thing you want to do is invest in another kind of expense that doesn't necessarily drive your business forward. And oftentimes we find that, that means they're investing everywhere but HR and payroll and kind of those centralized functions. And so we believe we can really come in and plug in and help them grow and stretch those functions to be better and more efficient and contributing more without necessarily having to spend as much there either as they grow. So it's not necessarily about we think they're going to eliminate a lot of people because they don't have a lot of people in that space in their business in the first place. But we do think the tools are going to enable them to grow faster than they were before. And that's where we think it's a total win-win.
And when you talk about like helping businesses run neatly, I think one of the things that you guys have always done in the history of Paychex is have not just the technology, but things like PEO, managed services, record keeping services. Um, how do you guys see AI playing into those areas where they've generally historically been sort of lower margin, like headcount grows with revenue type of businesses? Is there an opportunity to change that math?
Yeah, it's another really great question, and I think what's kind of cool about our position is we've already had those businesses for a long time, and they've grown and they've been hugely successful parts of who Paychex is, and we've done that with like literally world class margins, like leading and beating most of the margins of kind of the software only vendors that we compete against, and so as you look at kind of the way that the businesses or the landscape is changing a little bit, where you're starting to see people adding more of those kind of advisory services into their offerings. That's a real challenge, I think, for the companies that have to add that in now and grow and try and scale into that and maintain margins or even try to catch up to where we are. So the way we look at that is yes, there's absolutely no question that some of these tools are going to make the services we offer better, more powerful, enable us to be more efficient as well. But we look at that as we're already in a world-class position from that. And so that acceleration for us allows us just to drop that investment back into the business to keep coming out with new products, new services, new solutions for our customers. So we're hugely excited about what that means because we're coming from that position of strength. And we think it's really going to help us kind of have a great virtuous circle as we move forward.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the rise of managed services, HR outsourcing, whatever you want to call it, it's been definitely one of the stories of the last 5 or so years. And, there's been a lot of like independent firms that have grown really quickly doing that type of work. Obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of the HCM firms are saying, hey, let's offer this. But, I think one of the things I've heard from some of the companies that have recently launched it is the people on the front lines, the sales reps, they're like, I need to see some of my peers sell this and their clients not get mad before I'm ready to sell. There's like a trust factor of making sure that if we're going to take on some of these additional things, that it's a well-vetted service. But it sounds like you're saying one of the huge advantages is really just that long history of trial and error and best practices and, having a lot of that process excellence in place before now you layer in even more automation into that service offering.
Yeah, and I think what's been kind of interesting is as AI starts to take on a little bit more of the routine, whether it's a customer who uses the software and then seeks out like kind of that more strategic advice for us. Some of our customers rely on us wholly, and other customers do a lot more themselves. What we're finding is as AI is doing more, it's actually maybe ironically causing customers to want more interaction because it's taking on more of the routine, more of the, kind of, I'll call it the mundane, the everyday type tasks. And that's allowing them to get into the point where they can actually finally spend time thinking about the more strategic, the bigger changes, the kinds of things they're trying to drive in their business. And that's the stuff they actually really want to engage us in and get help on. And so we're finding that is, sometimes the narrative is it's going to eliminate the human. We're actually finding it brings the human more into the loop in a lot of these processes. I like to think of it as kind of more augmented intelligence for humans as opposed to artificial, because it's making everybody better and more efficient, whether it's our end users and our customers or our internal, associates who are providing these services. They're able to do everything from get to answers faster, provide right answers more quickly. The product is able to provide more and more of these things directly, which allows us to, again, spend more time on the more value added side of the business with our customers.
Yeah. One of the things that I've said a couple times to like HR professionals worried about the AI replacement is, I think all of us, whether in HR or anywhere, like AI is kind of giving us the challenge and the opportunity to just find better work. Like if the work that I used to do can now be done a lot more efficiently, then what does that open up for me? And, I think there is, like you said, like this more strategic element of HR that becomes available. There's more time in the day for it. Is that something where you feel like, is it a system nudge that helps companies do more of that strategic work? Is that more of like you guys having maybe transformation consulting type services? Like, what do you do to like kind of once you've taken stuff off a client's plate, help move them towards more strategic work?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is understanding there's a lot more that Paychex brings to the table and we can offer to help them. And this is allowing customers to start thinking about some of those things. Kind of to the point you were making, I don't know anyone these days who feels like, geez, I barely had enough to do, right? Like that doesn't seem to be a problem that most people are facing. And so as it's chopping off the bottom part of your to-do list, it's just enabling people to move up the chain a little bit. And that's where we're finding things like our HR advisory services and so forth are becoming even more important for customers because now they're getting to things that they can engage us on even more for services like that.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the things that was a news story in the HR AI recently was Anthropic announced, or they didn't announce, but people caught on that they had a job posting for people to come build their people product. And someone, the chief technology officer from Workday went over there. So there's a lot of signs out there that, maybe they're trying to get into the HCM or HRIS space. What do you think like a frontier AI company getting into the space will look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely remains to be seen, and there's a lot of speculation around that right now. I think the challenge any one of them will have is as AI becomes more and more powerful and is able to do more and more things, like what differentiates you is the data and the expertise and that moat in particular that you have in order to provide good recommendations and provide really solid products and services. And I think that's one of the challenges those kind of firms are going to have certainly in the near term is if they try and enter the space. And I think at the same time, all of us who have that advantage aren't sitting still either in terms of how we bring AI and that the power of that technology into the platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like you said, I think the moat of HCM, I think a lot of people across the industry have commented on the fact that it's about as strong as any industries with payroll, tax, regulation, money movement, all of those factors that it'll probably be very well insulated. So yeah, it'll be interesting if they do end up launching that product and seeing what that looks like. But I still remember Google launching like their applicant tracking system a handful of years ago, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're going to clean up," and then they shut it down quietly 3 years later. So it doesn't mean that just because these companies dip their toe in it, that they understand what they're getting into.
Well, and you mentioned some of the other pieces, right? It's things like the PEO, like that's not an area, right, that can be touched nearly as quickly because it's a lot more complicated and there's a lot more risk. I think the other challenge, that some of those firms will have is think of any chatbot you've used and what does it say at the bottom? Something along the lines of it's AI and it may make mistakes. Kind of back to the question that you asked earlier on, it's like that's not good enough when it comes to people and pay and benefits and all of this other data that infects employment. And so I think like we have a real opportunity with our expertise to be better than that.
Yeah. So I know we only got a couple more minutes. Maybe I'll just end us here. As you spent a little over a year now under Paychex, I'm sure a lot of that first year was, like you mentioned, integration, understanding what do we have, who's working on what, how do the pieces fit together. Now that you guys are further along and you can kind of really just focus on roadmap and future, what gets you excited over the next 12, 18 months about what you guys have in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'd say the way we go about building product and roadmap is changing faster than it ever has in my 25 plus years of career, right? Like the power that AI brings to understand the market, understand signals, understand what's going on, and then actually design products and solutions. Like we can do that faster than ever before. And so, as you probably read, right, the real push now becomes onto choosing the right things to go invest on. We've spent a ton of time as we've come together refocusing on our customer in particular because I think if now the currency is how fast can you make decisions and how good are the decisions you're making, like it all comes back to are you really maniacally focused on the customer and solving the right problems for them in particular. And that's where I'll sound like a broken record, but I get excited about the Wise launch. Like I think, what is out and what we've talked about today is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think the things we're going to be able to do for customers, the way we're going to be able to help them get work done and grow, and is going to be different than you've ever seen before. And at the end of the day, Paychex's mission is to help our customers' businesses succeed. And I love that because it's kind of a higher calling than HCM. And that's what I'm excited about is what our new platform is going to do to help customers on that path.
Yeah. There was a reaction in the market 3 months ago or whatever it was, that once these coding technologies were really proven at scale as a way to really kind of change the way software engineers work, that was a bad thing for SaaS companies. And I think as those 3 months have passed, like, it's become so much clearer that these SaaS companies have built incredible product discipline over the years of, like, the quality control and the sprints and the stand-ups and everything that goes into building a world-class product, that you take that framework and you supercharge it with the ability to manufacture code way faster. And it's like, wait a second, are we sure the SaaS companies aren't just like going to be 10 times more valuable because they have the best of both worlds? They have the speed and sort of the rigor that came with the 20 years before it.
Yeah, no, I love that argument. The things that's interesting about kind of what it does, and I can't remember the article I read this in, but I wish I could give the right credit. But what it lacks is taste, right? Like, so AI and those things are really good at kind of recreating and replicating um, things and spitting that out in mass. That's why it seems like every PowerPoint deck you see right now looks the same because they've all been run through Claude to build the deck. But and I think that's one of the things that we still bring to the table as a software company, right? Is that ability to really go after and uniquely understand the customer and solve problems in ways that are more meaningful than just kind of the stuff that's being generated rapidly and in mass by some of the AI tools. And that's a key differentiation because I think users are going to be wanting that over time. You're already starting to see that in some of the backlash against kind of vanilla platforms that are all coming out looking the same. So doesn't mean that there's not a big challenge ahead, but I think like I'm super bullish about our opportunity to kind of take advantage and keep winning there.
Yeah. Well, we're excited as well. So thanks for sitting down today and taking the time to kind of walk us through what the future looks like. But it's been a pleasure, Ron. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to spend some time.
Awesome.